What is going on, everyone? Today, we have a special guest on to talk about improving the speed, maintaining, and extensibility of using React. Now, this is super important because a lot of times projects can get frozen. So in this, we'll be diving into how to choose like the right libraries, how do you systems and standards to help you through your project in React. Now, this is super important because I know a lot of you out there are building in React, and as you're trying to move fast and create these new innovative technologies to bring to market, getting these expert insights is really helpful. So we are very happy today to have Arbor Shabani. I knew I was going to mess it up, but thank you so much, man, for coming on. And how's it going today?
Thank you very much for the invitation as well. So yeah, it's going well. Yeah, I'm quite interested to talk about the topic. It's quite an important topic that really needs to be discussed more because there are quite a lot of factors that play into it, and it is quite efficient for companies to use strategies from what I'm going to present. So that's quite important, and yeah.
Of course. Well, man, I would love to get your intro because I've heard some things about it. I've heard about a helicopter pilot, about a free diver. Like, it sounds like you do quite a bit more than just programming. So, like, what if you want to give us a quick intro to yourself? That'd be awesome.
Yeah, I mean, so I'm Shavani. I am primarily focused in software engineering, and my particular focus is React. But also, once I learned that you can become an expert in software, I just use the same strategy to just move on to freediving, flying helicopter. I still don't have my license, though I think soon I'll have it, my private pilot license.
Mm-hmm.
And later on, I will try for the CPL commercial one. So yeah, it's quite interesting. I'm a passionate learner, so it's always good for me to just explore new areas. And I had the chance to learn quite a lot about in free diving for the human body, how it works, the sea, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And with helicopter pilot, you have to learn quite a lot more stuff because it encompasses quite a lot of stuff, not only aerodromes, but it moves on to law, to uh, Earth, like how it works, because the heights, etc., the winds, and
Mm-hmm.
it's a whole thing on its own. So I'm quite passionate to just explore that. So yeah, playing piano as well. I just have fun with it. I just quite like it.
Mm-hmm.
And other than that, regarding the work side of things, I worked with quite a lot of clients within a lot of industries, and that's where I got to develop my skills quite a lot because I got to see exactly what patterns they were using and which one would fit for certain industry or certain scale of project, whether it be huge or small. So yeah, that's kind
That's
of
quite the that's quite the resume, man. I would sure that moving into free diving or flying helicopters, the margin for error is probably much lower there than it is
yeah.
in writing code. But if you
I
take that
mean,
same passion into it, that's got to be amazing.
mhm. It's still a lot safer than you think
Mm.
because when you just think about it, it doesn't sound safe, but at the end of the day, when you get used to it, it is a lot safer than regular stuff. So,
Yeah. Well, that's awesome, man. Well, look, I'm going to turn it over to you. Let you give the rundown, and at the end, we'll chat about it some more, answer any questions that might have come up. But really looking forward to hearing what you got to say, man.
well, thank you very much.
Awesome.
I'm going to share my screen now. Just uh, so can you see my screen currently? Okay, cool. So yeah, improving speed maintainability and extensibility in React. That's quite an important topic because uh, there are quite a lot of companies who get stuck in different areas. So it's good to understand like what to do and what not to do. So I'm going to go through a list of stuff that helps the project. So this is not engineer specific related because even a tech lead, a team lead could apply some of the concepts to improve their projects. So uh, let's just dive into it. So the first topic is making informed decisions in React. It's quite important because usually when starting a project from scratch or when you have to refactor because the project has been done in an incorrect manner, then it's quite important to make informed decisions because at the end of the day, it makes the efficiency on delivering quite better. And you have to just make sure that you are able to deliver in time and also improve the code quality at the same time. So consideration when selecting libraries is the scale of the project, the team size, and future plans. If the scale of the project is huge, you'd like to select libraries which include quite a lot of stuff, so you don't have to select 20 libraries to get 20 functionalities, but rather one library which provides 10 functionalities. Therefore, the size of the project doesn't increase too much. And the team size, of course, this matters because if you structure a project for a low-size team, then it's difficult for the team, if it grows, to work on the project because they may have issues, conflicts, so it's difficult to manage. So thinking ahead of time for that part is just helpful because it makes a lot of sense for the future and just avoids the waste of time that usually happens when stuff like that occurs. The size of the libraries, that's quite common. So we have to be careful because some libraries might be huge with megabytes and the page would be loading slower. So it's good to uh, to just make sure that you check before using it. NPM trends, that's quite important as well because you can compare libraries and you see like which one is mostly used in the community. So that helps a lot with picking the library that most companies are using. GitHub issues, that is quite efficient because you can check the issues and if they aren't being resolved, that means the project is going out of date. So it's good to make sure that you stay ahead of it by checking and just making sure that they are tackling the issues and new issues are coming up. So lots of edge cases are being handled by the libraries. The next thing is democracy fails when making React architectural decisions. This happens because engineers tend to choose stuff that they used before and they like. So they're accustomed to certain stuff and they like to use that technology. And that's a biased thing because you just want to make stuff easier for you. So when making decisions, I'd say it's best to consult with people with experience across industries and projects. They are usually most informed about the pros and cons about certain technology and stuff like that, so they can make better decisions on it. Usually this is the role of the tech lead because they have more experience and they can make those decisions. Stepping on the creative zone at times introduces risk. I've seen it with companies. They try to do everything on their own, like we are doing everything from scratch. And that's not quite ideal because uh, when trying to reinvent the wheel, you are spending a lot of time. And if a library, let's say, they handle 100 edge cases, then you have just one functionality that doesn't handle those 100 edge cases. So it's good to not try to reinvent the wheel, but think about it in a more efficient manner. So you just make sure that you develop, and if it's something available and free, use it instead of trying to reinvent it. Enhancing maintainability and speed in React. That comes with component organization and structure. We have pages, layouts, containers, components. Just try to set up a good structure that whenever a new joiner comes, they can be quite easily adapted to that. And based on the structure, they can just realize where the logic is happening and how to work with it. This helps when onboarding new engineers, but also with the team because everything stays more organized. The separation of concerns to break the components down into smaller pieces that is more readable and efficient. So it's just good to keep the state management separate, UI library separate, because it just separates the concerns and then you don't have to worry about breaking a style when working on the state management, let's say. So it's just good to separate that and keep it simple. State management strategies, one of them is manage the data on the top layer, because most of the time there are quite a lot of issues that happen when you're trying to set up, when you manage the state, let's say from a component up, down, and then up. So it's just a lot of movement around and you have to pass a lot of props. It just makes everything a lot, very complex. In order to not have that issue, just manage the data on the top layer, and then further down the chain, just pass the data. So it's easy to just show it in the UI with however you want to manage it. And it just makes more sense because you don't have to then change it up and down, but it's just in one place and it's simple to use and access. And of course, there are stores, for example, Redux, the context, etc., that you can use to manage the data that way. Just try to keep it like separate from the UI components because it just increases the complexity. Code quality and best practices. As we're all aware, ESLint, Prettier, and TypeScript, those are very important for projects. ESLint and Prettier, I think they should be part of React by now. So it's just good to have those. And I'll just take a sip. So ESLint and Prettier just improve the code, how it looks, and it makes it easier to use. And you avoid certain issues by using ESLint. With TypeScript, it's more project-based, and depending on the intensity of work that you do, if you have urgent deadlines, TypeScript is not that ideal, but other than that, it's quite ideal for small and large projects. So I always suggest towards using it. Code reusability, I say this with caution because reusable code should be cleaned and efficient. And most of the time when people write reusable code, it becomes very messy, and that's not the point of the reusable code. So if else conditions start piling up, that's usually a sign that it's not that good. Because the code is not reusable, you have to add if conditions. But sometimes just try to keep a clear mind, and sometimes making a duplicate might be better than trying to make a reusable code. So just keep that in back of mind because it just makes everything a lot easier and simpler. Testing and documentation. I'm quite passionate about testing because at the end of the day, it allows for efficient and quick delivery. When you have tests, it is so easy to deliver because you have the tests in place and you can deliver within hours. Instead of when you don't have tests, it requires the testing part and just slows everything down. So that's something that I always suggest because it's efficient. And documentation, this is quite important because whenever a new engineer is joining in and onboarding, then you as a team lead, as an engineer, you have to onboard them and to guide them on the project. Whereas if there was documentation, you wouldn't need to do that, and your time could be more valuable being spent in more important places. Therefore, if you document stuff, you avoid that whole hassle of having to onboard people, whereas you could be working on something a lot more important and with more value for the team, for the project. Best practices. So to keep the modular code organization, that relates to the parts that I mentioned previously. So it's good to keep the project clean, separation of concerns, but also when you have modular code organization, it's easy because teammates can work on separate stuff without having conflicts. And that's quite important for the project because when there are no conflicts, it's easy to deliver, it's quicker. So at the end of the day, you can save a lot of hours by just having a modular code organization. Efficient data management, that should depend on the size of the project. If you have a small project, just use simple state management libraries they are lighter, they are more useful if you have a small project. If you have a large project, then of course you use more complex state management libraries. Don't try to pick the one that you know, but rather be aware of what exists, and it makes the project a lot easier when you pick the right choice. And if you are not sure about the project, pick something medium-sized, which can be scaled up, so at the end of the day, you still make the right decision. Performance of performance and optimization techniques. We have lazy loading when the project is large, and that is quite good. So it's good to use that. Use memo, and use callback. I didn't go very deep into it, but this is a part that you should be careful with. If your project has a lot of usage of the use memo, it means that you haven't handled the project quite well. It's good to simplify the code and make it consistent. If the code is simple, there is no need for use memo, stuff like that. It's useful when you have a complex logic, a calculation logic, or certain stuff, which takes a lot of params, needs to return lots of data. That's quite useful, but other than that, it's not very efficient, because if you overuse it, it's not good, and it actually slows the project down by also causing the caching issues which may occur. So it's just good to be careful when using those. With the use callback, it's a bit easier because you just need to check if you're passing a function down to the child components. And if you're using it for the current component, then it's not needed. So it just adds more caching issues to the React, how it manages the scripting code inside of the React. So you just need to be aware of it. So case studies, I just took a few of them, which were quite important to me at the time of that I worked on them. So a chat collaboration platform that I worked with, choosing the libraries and defining code patterns, that made the code, the development a lot faster, because the libraries were chosen, the code patterns were defined, it made everything a lot smoother, and we're able to deliver a lot quicker. Creating libraries, which is what I mentioned a bit earlier with reinventing the wheel. I did that myself, so it's an issue. It's not something that I did right, but it's something to learn, because creating the library just reinvented the wheel. Something similar already existed and just slowed stuff down, because the library had edge cases and then we had to onboard the team on it. So that was an incorrect choice and something to be wary of. Using advanced Git, that is also an issue, because using submodules, stuff like that, if the team is not very good at Git, it just makes everything more complex and it just slows everything down. Overusing use callback, I did some performance testing back in the day, so it was quite interesting to see how negatively it affected by overusing it. So just be careful and use it only when necessary. The logistics and data science project, the state management hierarchy and components. That was quite good, because we implemented a state management hierarchy on the top of the chain, the containers part. So that made it quite efficient, because the whole team was moving with ease, implementing stuff. None of the team members were being blocked. And we managed to turn the whole project, because it was refactoring a whole project from old React to the newer technologies, not changing the React, but rather changing the routing, the old Bootstrap stuff. So it was quite a lot of changes, and this just helped the project be a lot more efficient. With a fintech product, I still need to drink some water. With the fintech product, UI library was very good for extensibility, because it just made everything a lot easier. You didn't have to manage UI when using it. So you just pass down the data that you needed and everything worked correctly. So it's good to always think about it that way, because at the end of the day, the UI should not really interfere with state and stuff like that. TypeScript, it helps a lot when a new joiner joins the team. They have an easier way of knowing what is happening. They know what props are supposed to be there. So it just makes stuff a lot easier to go through, therefore improving like the speed of the delivery of the teams. Takeaways. Regarding speed, we should try to keep the code simple and clean. At the end of the day, keeping stuff simple and clean, it's the most efficient thing you can do, and it just improves everything. So choosing the libraries carefully, that's something we discussed. It's quite important. So be aware when choosing the libraries, depending on the project. So just make sure you pay attention to that. Effective use of use callback, something I just mentioned in the past slide, so it's quite important to use it effectively. Maintainability, organizing the code structure and separating the concerns with containers, managing the data, components, presentation layer, just knowing how to organize the code specifically, so every new joiner wouldn't need to dive too deep into the project to realize what's happening. So that's quite important. Using the best practices, ESLint, Preter, TypeScript, that's quite a go-to and quite straightforward. Extensibility, the UI library with plain and simple components, or as we like to call them, dump components. Custom hooks and services for shared logic, just so we don't repeat stuff over and over again. Reusable code while keeping the scalability in mind, so not allowing to add too many if conditions, but keeping stuff simple and reusable. So the benefits of all these are frequent deployments. You can deploy daily, which is quite good because the more often you can deploy, the easier it becomes. Onboarding new engineers with ease. If the code patterns are right, the onboarding will be quite easy and straightforward, and it just removed that whole time management thing because a lot of stuff is already pre-handled. Good teamwork, because when team works together and chooses the right technologies, they have an easier time working because they don't need to read 20 times the same one piece of code to try to understand and make sense of it. Less refactoring, because once you do it right, you don't need to refactor. So yeah, these are kind of the benefits in a nutshell. So thank you very much. This was my presentation. Of course, this has come from lots of experience, years of experience with lots of companies. And I've seen like how small companies, large companies with large teams, small teams, they all affect like different areas. So based on the patterns I saw, I tried to make a presentation that shows how to approach problems and how to solve them. So hopefully that was helpful to you. And yeah, if you have any questions, I'm open for it. I'm quite interested in that. Sure.
And yeah, we can go back. So that was amazing, man. That's really good. And you hit on an interesting point in the beginning that I've actually seen come up a lot. And in one of my form, like many moons ago when I was doing programming, it wasn't React, but I think the problem was still the same of, where you get a code base that's like been built on by maybe multiple different teams of engineers have come in, and then it starts to become like this behemoth of a thing, and refactoring it becomes really, really difficult. Um, the question I would have for you is, how do you put these best practices like into practice, right? Like let's say that I'm hiring, like I'm leading a team. I've just hired on 4 new React engineers. Like what's the best way for leaders to like set precedents, to like set these best practices in motion?
One of the things as a team lead, it depends if you're technical.
Hmm.
So if you're a technical team lead, then you can set up some documentation, and therefore you can take out of the team the person who is most experienced with the technology, and then give them tasks to set up certain stuff that they have to set up,
Hmm.
and guide them in a way. So if if you are technical, you can guide them more specifically.
Right.
And when doing code reviews, then you can approve or ask them to make certain changes because of your experience and how it affects it. And if you're not technical team leader, then it's good to find like the best person in the team. Of course, it's not good to separate the engineers like this one is better and stuff like that. But it's good to recognize like which one has experience with setting stuff up and then guiding them, okay, this is what I need from you. And it's good to doing a spec of the tasks because some of the time when as engineers, we like to just start implementing stuff without thinking too much about it.
Right.
So speccing out, that helps a lot because you have to analyze the issue, come up with certain solutions, but don't pick it. You just have to come up with certain solutions, and then the team lead can make the decision or the engineer himself. But at least there is an informed decision that is happening. So it's just
Hmm.
good to have that information before implementing it.
Got it. No, that's super helpful. Yeah, and that's, I mean, I think that one of the, and you mentioned a good point there too, is that a lot of teams just try to jump in off the bat and start doing stuff, and there's not that time spent to think through what does the, like what will the impact of our decisions now mean in 6 or 8 or 12 months or even years from now when you're thinking about maintainability over time.
Mhm.
When you're thinking about it, you mentioned a good one too of onboarding new devs. I think that's a thing that a lot of I would say individual contributors don't think about, but from
Mhm.
managing a project or if this is your own company that you're starting, right? Like there's cost associated with ramping
Mhm.
and onboarding and bringing people in. So reducing a lot of those barriers is extremely, extremely beneficial.
Mhm.
But yeah, no, dude, overall, I thought this is really, really good stuff. Me, as not a React developer, I even got something out of it. And as someone who hasn't programmed in a long time, um, got something out of it. So this was incredibly, incredibly helpful. If we have any other questions that end up coming through, or people will ask questions on the YouTube comments or stuff back there, we'll make sure to let you know. But
Mhm.
before we sign off, are there any? Is there anywhere if people want to keep up with you? Is there anything cool that you're working on that you want to plug, or if people want to follow you, best place to do that?
I mean, LinkedIn is a place regarding work. I mean, other than that, I have social media, but I haven't thought about it. It was mainly focused on the presentation.
Yeah.
So, I mean, people can reach me. I'm quite open. I like to keep myself humble regardless of where I get in life. So, it's always quite easy to reach me as
Hmm.
long as people are interested and want to know more.
Awesome, man. Well, dude, thank you so so much again. I really really appreciate it, and look forward to hopefully being able to work together and seeing some of these expertise in action.
Thank you very much
All
as
right.
well.
Thank you, man. See
And
ya.
thank you. See you.
And awesome, awesome chat. That was really, really good stuff, right? And like having experts come in to tell you about the best practices when building this stuff is extremely, extremely important because again, if you're whether you're listening to this as a individual contributor or like you're a programmer trying to get some of these best practices, or whether you're a leader leading a team or multiple teams of engineers, it's important to know these things. So as you go in to building your team, to scaling your team, to starting your team, you can put a lot of these things in practice because kind of once you're down that road, it makes it really hard to go back and retroactively fix a lot of these problems that you could have with just a little bit of thought solved at the forefront. But with that, we are out today and look forward to seeing you on the next Expert Talks. And Keith, run the outro, my friend.